Okay, hello everyone. We discussed risk management in the last session. Can anyone of you recap what we discussed yesterday? Pedro.
Yes, Faiz. We discussed about risk management and the processes involved with the risk management, and how that the risk management is very important to a project, and the project plan, management plan is not complete without a risk management plan, which will look and take care of the risk of the project, both known unknown and unknown.
Yep.
And so we discuss about the risk responses and how to do it. And then the monitoring of the risks.
Oh. In
And
fact,
risk can be converted into values.
true. Agreed. And we also discussed how agile approach looks at the risk, how they treat the risks, and why they are considered a better approach where projects are very uncertain, projects are more risky. In fact, there is a separate certification by PMI called PMI RMP, risk management professionals. The project managers who are involved in more critical, more risky projects, they might like to go for this certification, but after PMP. More risky projects are those projects where there are chances of like loss of lives, or there are vulnerable people, or your essential money is at risk, so on and so forth. So on that type of projects, thorough risk management is highly recommended. And when we talk about risk management, it's very important that we should identify as many risks as possible. We should not only content with only 10 to 15 risks on our projects. Risk could be much more than that. There could be around 200 to 400 risks on any small to medium scale project. So better risk management, or thorough risk management is always helpful. Today, we are going to discuss procurement management. Normally, project managers don't like procurements. It's not their areas of expertise. In fact, most of the time they are not involved in the procurements or in the purchase or in the legal agreements or the contracts. So they might not have that thorough understanding or in-depth understanding of procurement. But it is very, very important for project managers to understand procurement, understand the contracts, understand the legal terminologies, especially related to their own projects. In the end, the project is baby of a project manager. He is or she is responsible for every aspect of the project, including the procurement. So the focus of this knowledge area is to help the project managers give this capability so that they can create, read, and manage contracts and supporting documents. It's not compulsory that project manager always create the contracts, but it is important for the project managers to read, understand, and manage the contracts as per the need of the project. And also when there is a procurement done on any project, though it's not compulsory that each project will have procurement, there could be many internal projects where you are making the product by yourself, creating the service by yourself. In those cases, most of the times, you don't have any procurement involved. However, there are chances, in fact, in number of projects, you have to do procurement. Either this is a procurement for goods, for the services, for the equipment, tools, people as a contractors joining you, so on and so forth. So it's pretty important because you are the manager who needs to take care of the goods, who needs to work with the contractors, who need to ensure that services are delivered properly as per the contract. So it's very important that you should be able to read, understand, interpret, and manage the contracts and also associated documents. In fact, there are many associated documents when there is a procurement. For example, statement of work, for example, bidding documents, purchase orders, invoices, agreements, MOUs, so on and so forth. There are total 3 processes in procurement management. In fact, in the previous version of PMBOK, Body of Knowledge by PMI, there were 4 processes. Plan procurement management, conduct procurement management, control procurements, and the last one was close procurements. Now this close procurements, this particular process is eliminated by PMI, and the activities that is done into close procurements are either done in this process that is called control procurement, or in the process called close a project or phase. That is our last process. So for example, remember that there are in total 3 processes. The first process, as you can expect, in the planning process group, second in executing, and the last one is in monitoring and controlling. Any question, guys?
No.
Thank you, Tanya. Now, before understanding the procurement, going deep into the procurement management, it's very important that we should understand what are agreements, what are contracts, how both are different from each other. What do you think, guys? What's the difference between 2 terms, agreements and contracts?
I think contract is legally binding, or it's actually a type of agreement.
Fully agreed. Yes, Mera. So contract is a legal binding that is protected by the laws of that particular country or maybe international laws. And contracts are one type of agreement. Fully agreed. Okay. However, agreements need not to be a legal binding. It is basically a relationship between the 2 entities. This relationship could be in the form of a contract. It could be form of MOA or MOU, or this could be a service level agreement, so on, so forth. On the other side, when we talk about contracts, as Mehra, you just mentioned that they are legal bindings. However, it's not compulsory that they are always written. They could be verbal agreements as well, could be just handshakes. However, it is highly recommended that our contracts should be formal and written. Normally, the contracts are made for the sake of either buying goods or getting the services, and in return, buyer pays some compensation to the seller, normally, for example, monetary values like money. So seller provides either goods or services, and buyer in return gives some compensation, for example, the cost of those goods and services. Now, when we already understand the difference between agreements and contracts, the next step is what is required for a project manager to be good during the procurement. A project manager should have a good legal knowledge, negotiation skills, project manager could be on the buyer side, could be on the seller side. But always remember, guys, when you are giving PMP exam, always consider yourself as a project manager of the buyer side until the question specifically mentioned that you are a project manager from the seller side. So by default, consider yourself a project manager from the buyer side. So you should have a good legal knowledge, knowledge of the terminologies, legal terminologies, clauses, so on and so forth. You should have good negotiation skills that could that is required when you are dealing with the buyer, with the contractors or suppliers. And also you should have a very good understanding of procurement processes. And procurement processes, as we discussed in the last slide, they are planning for procurement, and by following the plan, conducting the procurement, and once procurement is done, controlling that procurement. Though it is acceptable and it makes a lot of sense that you really don't need to have a very in-depth legal knowledge or negotiation skills, but it's good to have that knowledge because you need to work with the procurement department during the procurement work, and you need to deal with the contractor and suppliers. You are the one who are providing statement of work to the legal team, to the procurement team, who is going to make a contract with the seller or with the buyer. As a project manager, it's required that you should be able to make a procurement management plan, a procurement strategy, and a procurement statement of work. Now, when we talk about procurement plan, there are many things involved into it. Are we going to conduct procurement? We are going to conduct procurement or not? Are we going to make it or buy it? Called make or buy analysis. We are going to discuss it soon. If we are going to buy it from outside, from where we will buy, when we will buy, who are the preferred sellers, so on and so forth. Not only this, in the procurement plan, let's call it PP, for each procurement, you have to create a procurement strategy, because on any project, there could be more than one procurements. Procurement of one type of good, procurement of another type of good, procurement of equipment, raw material, and procurement of services, so on and so forth. So as a project manager, you should develop procurement strategies for each type of procurement. And similarly, you have to create statement of work for each type of procurement. And in result, there would be multiple contracts within one procurement management plan on any given project. Any questions?
Oh, good.
Okay, let's move further. I believe that everybody understands who is a buyer, who is a seller in any agreement or a contract, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so buyer is someone, a company or a person who purchase goods or services, and seller is the one who provides the services and in return get some compensation. What happens in one project or within one organization, a company could be a buyer in one case and could be a seller into another case, isn't it?
Yep.
Now, let's have a look on some tricks while you are answering procurement related questions in PMP. Can anybody help me to read through these tricks so that we can discuss one by one?
So the first one is contracts require formality.
Yeah, contracts could be written or written or verbal, but they must be formal. it's highly recommended that contracts should be in the written form.
All products and project management requirements for the procurement work should be specifically stated in the contract.
So we normally call it statement of work. Statement of work is normally prepared by project manager and his or her team. Next.
If it is not in the contract, it can only be required to be done if a formal change order to the contract is issued.
Statement of work normally contains scope of the work. Either it's a product, service, or a change. Okay. If anything that is not mentioned in the scope of the work or in the statement of the work, then the seller is not bound to do that work. If you want the seller to do that work, it could be only done through a formal change in the contract.
If it is in the contract, it must be done, or a formal change order must be approved by both parties.
Yeah, so it's a vice versa case where something, if that is mentioned in the statement of work, it must be done by the seller by law. If he or she doesn't do it, then a formal change is required in the contract. Next.
Changes to contracts must be submitted and approved in writing.
So that is like there should be formal change requests so that contracts could be updated. Normally we call them VOC, variation of conditions. Next.
Contracts are legally binding.
We already talked about it as compared to generic agreements. Contracts are those type of agreements which are legal binding, and normally there is a system available in case if there is a dispute in this legal binding.
Contracts should help diminish project risk.
In fact, most of the contracts, their purpose is to transfer the risk. Transfer the risk from the one organization to another organization who is expert in doing that. For example, if you ask a construction company to build your house, normally what they do, they give timber work to one type of contractor, electrical work to another type of contractor, so that risk should be reduced. Okay, so this is one of the main purpose, transferring the risks from one organization to the other organization who can cater for that risk very well.
Most governments back all contracts that fall within their jurisdiction by providing a court system for dispute resolution.
So we just discussed about it. Most of the governments, they always have dispute resolution systems where if there is a dispute, then basically you can go and the decision is made by a third party. In fact, there is a step-by-step procedure for that, and you can go through it if there is any dispute among you and your contractor. Anyone, any example about it? Anybody went in any dispute regarding a contract?
No, I haven't.
We have to go multiple times, and it happens. In New Zealand, there are step-by-step procedures. Firstly, they try to resolve the issue with good faith within the organization. But if it doesn't resolve, then you have to go to a dispute board, and they try to resolve that issue. But if still issue persists, then you have to go to the court. So it happens when you are doing business, then you have to come across these type of challenges. Then there comes another concept in procurement called centralized and decentralized contracting. The concept is very simple. In most of the organization, the contracting, the procurement is normally done by one main department called procurement department or legal department. Whenever project manager need to done any type of procurement of goods or services, they can go and ask help from the procurement department. As most of the organizations have this type of centralized procurement processes, on PMP exam, you must consider that in your organization has centralized procurement, unless it is clearly mentioned in the question that you are working in an organization where there is no centralized contracting or procurement. In case, if there is no centralized procurement, in that case, project manager has to create the contracts because there is no legal department. Project manager is responsible for creating the contracts and conducting all the procurement. Now let's look further into project manager role in procurement. One is, if it is centralized contracting, project manager needs to work with the legal department. He or she should have good understanding of legal terminologies, interpretation of the clauses, statement of work, ensuring that work is being done as per the contract, invoices are being paid once work is reviewed, so on and so forth. So these are particular roles of project managers in centralized contracting. And in decentralized contracting, he has to do much more than this. He has to create the contracts or agreements. He has to create all other procurement related documents. For example, bidding documents, invitation for bidding, request for proposal, so on, so forth. On top of that, as it's project manager's project, he or she is solo responsible for the project. Project manager should be involved in the procurement process as early as possible. It is highly recommended that there should be project managers on both sides, on seller side and the buyer side. And always assume that you are on buyer side project manager unless if it is specifically mentioned otherwise. When you will be doing your exam, most of the questions related to procurement may check your understanding of your role, your responsibility during the procurement work. For example, when a project manager should be involved in the procurement and why a project manager should be involved in procurement. It is highly recommended that project manager should be involved early in the procurement. It is also highly recommended that project manager and his or her team should work with the legal department so that contract should be as per the need of the project to fulfill the project objectives. Now, when we go for the procurement management, the first process, that is planning for the procurement management. Even before doing the planning, we have to do one thing, and that is called make or buy analysis. What does it mean, guys, make or buy analysis?
Whether you're going to source it internally or externally.
Yeah, so or we are going to do the work internally or externally. And decision tree can help you to make this type of decision of making or buying anything. Once decision is in favor of buying, now you have to go for procurement. Next step is you have to identify the goods and services that you need to procure on your project. Also, once those goods and services are identified, next step is how we are going to purchase them, from where we are going to purchase them, who are the potential sellers, how to select the potential sellers, what is the criteria to choose one seller or another seller, at what point of time we are going to procure our goods and services, so on, so forth. The steps involved in planned procurement are given here. Firstly, make or buy analysis. If we are going to buy something, next step is create procurement management plan. This is how to do the procurement, and also in this plan we create procurement strategies for each of our procurement. Either it's a raw material, equipment, tools, machinery, or the contractors. We have to develop a procurement strategy. We also have to create statement of work for each procurement. We have to choose appropriate contract types. If they are goods, maybe a different contract type. If they are services, could be a different contract type. If we are in the construction sector, contracts could be different. If we are like in the event management or in IT or telco or mechanical engineering or any other industry, normally the type of contracts that are recommended are different from each other. Normally, there are some industry-specific contracts. We are going to look on the contracts soon. Also, to choose the sellers, normally we go for the bidding conference. And before bidding conference, we create bidding documents that could be, for example, invitation for bid, request for proposal, request for information, so on and so forth. Also, during planning, we set a criteria for the source selection, for the supplier or provider selection. It could be based on multi-criteria, where we do some scoring model or weighting model to choose one type of seller or the other. Few inputs that are required before planning for the procurement management, including project charter, business documents, project management plan, project documents, EFs, OPAs, and another input that is specific to this process called pre-approved seller list. It's not compulsory to have this list, but most of the organization, they have their pre-approved or preferred sellers. And it is normally recommended by the organization to go to that particular seller if you need to buy something or need to get any service. Make or buy analysis, we already talked about it. It is a decision that either we are going to make a particular component of our project, particular deliverable of a project in-house, or we are going to outsource it. And we do this make or buy analysis maybe based on an economic model. You can use many different tools and techniques to do the make or buy analysis, but normally economic models are the best for this purpose, where you see that whose payback period is less, where ROI is better, where internal rate of return would be higher, so on, so forth. Similarly, you also think in terms of logistics and supply chain management, that also talk about that when procurement must be conducted, because procurement may take time. So you have to keep that thing in mind, that you should put some lead time so that when your actual work starts, your procurement or your contractors should be available. Any questions?
Oh, good.
Source selection analysis. Source selection analysis is normally done when there are multiple suppliers or even multiple pre-approved suppliers, and you have to choose one of them. And normally you set a criteria for that sake. And this criteria, for example, could be number of years in business, financial stability, understanding of need, price or life cycle cost, technical expertise, quality of past performance, and ability to complete the work on time. In fact, all of them are pretty important, and most of the organizations consider all these bits. And sometimes what they do, they put this criteria on a spider web. So there is a tool called spider web, and on that spider web, they put all these criteria. For example, number of years in business here, financial stability here, understanding of need here, price or life cycle costing here, so on and so forth. After that, what they do is they put their minimum requirements or standard requirements, you can say. And they, for example, put it something like that. So they say that this is our minimum requirements. And then normally there is an Excel sheet or any calculation where the sellers, they put different values, for example, number of years in business, financial stability, including many different components, revenues, capitals, capital gains, profits, assets, so on and so forth. The understanding of need, price or life cycle cost, technical expertise, so on and so forth. Okay, so they put values here in this Excel sheet, and based on these values, their value is shown on this web. That could be, for example, something like this. For, you can say, for seller one. Here you can clearly see that here seller one is not fulfilling the criteria. Here seller is exceeding the criteria. Here exceeding the criteria. Here it is not fulfilling. Here exceeding it. So normally, based on this criteria, different sellers are chosen by the organizations. Any questions about it? Well, let's move further. Once make or buy decision is done, the next step is developing the procurement management plan and developing the procurement strategy for each procurement. And when we talk about the strategy, it talks about how goods or services will be delivered, what type of contracts will be done, how payments will be made, how many different procurement phases would be there, so on, so forth. One of the important component of procurement strategy is type of contracts. They highly depend what we are going to purchase. Either they are goods or what type of goods, or the services. Do we have the detailed statement of work or not? Sometimes the organization even don't know their need. They don't know their requirements. They don't know the scope of the work. And for that, they consult the experts, the contractors. In case when statement of work or scope is not well defined, you can choose one type of contract. But if you know your work that needs to be done, you are pretty sure well-defined statement of work, then you might go for another type of contract, so on and so forth. Similarly, contract types depend on the level and level of expertise of the buyer or the effort the buyer can put. Sometimes you are expert, but you really don't have time to do that work. In that case, you choose one type of contract. In other case, you are not expert, but you have a lot of time to work with the contractor. In that case, you might go for another type of contract, so on, so forth. Also, when contracts are being made, buyer may think about providing incentives to the sellers. Anybody of you ever made a contract?
Sort of.
Yeah. So do you ever offer incentives on top of standard price or standard fee?
we did based on volume delivered
Yes.
by a certain point.
Yeah, true. So based on contractor's performance and because of some other factors, you may add some incentives or awards into the contract on top of the fee. Contract types also depend on the marketplace and economy and also industry standards. As I just mentioned, the construction might have different type of contracts. Telco may have totally different type of contracts. Few contract types. Overall, we can categorize them into three types. The first one is fixed price. The second one is time and material. And the last one is cost reimbursable. Fixed price is normally given when statement of work is well defined. We know our need. Scope is well defined. Okay, we know our requirements. We well define it, and based on that defined work or statement of work, we offer a fixed price to the contractor or the seller. There could be multiple types of fixed price. For example, not only we will pay you the price, but we will also give you some incentive fee. That's what we offer to the seller. Or in another case, we say that we may give you an award fee. And what's the difference between incentive and award fee, Tanya? Any idea?
I would have said incentives more progressive, or maybe different stages. Award might be at the end. I don't know.
I think you're correct by many senses. Incentive fee is something that is well defined in the contract and could be given as contractor is performing. Award fee could be something that could be given at the end, and normally award fee is not mentioned. Buyer really doesn't say that, okay, I'm going to pay you 10% incentive if you complete the work on time, or instead of 6 months, complete the work in 4 months. And this 10% is well defined. Okay, on the other side, award fee is you say that do this work on time. If you can do it in 4 months, I will give you an award or a bonus. But you don't determine that bonus. And normally you give that bonus at the end. And similarly, if pricing or procurement is done for longer period of time, for example, over a year, in that, and especially if it is done internationally, you are exporting or importing something, in that case, the type of contract could be fixed price, economic price adjustment, where you take care of currency conversion rates, so on, so forth. Even if this procurement is internal, still prices could be changed over the period of 1 year. And then another type of fixed price is purchase order. Simple. You order 10 laptops for your team, and then you just did a purchase order and paid for it. So this is simplest form of fixed price. Time and material, from the name you can see, you pay for material, you also pay for labor. That could be per hour based, could be per item based. Any question? Cost reimbursable contracts. They are very risky type of contracts, risky for the buyers, because in that case, what buyer does is, buyer don't know the volume of the work. He or she doesn't know the statement of work or the scope of the work. There are many uncertain components in it. In that case, buyer asks the sellers, please do it and we will reimburse you the cost. And this cost could be cost plus fee. So one type of it is cost plus fixed fee. where you pay the cost and you also pay the fixed fee to the seller. Another type could be cost plus incentive fee. And third type is cost plus award fee. We already discussed about them. And next one is cost plus percentage of cost, CPPC. That is, okay, if cost is 1 million and we will pay you 10% as a profit. So instead of 1 million, you pay 1.1 million. Anybody use this type of contracts?
For us, we use fixed price and TNM.
Yeah, TNM and fixed price. They are standard type of contracts mostly used, but in some cases we can also use CR or cost reimbursable. Any example, guys? What could be the case where there are some cost reimbursable contracts?
Yeah, we have a contract like this. It was with one big company who is actually doing the mining for us.
Yes.
So it's on a cost plus basis.
Yeah. So in mining industry, where a lot of research, feasibility needs to be done, and there is no idea what is going to happen in future. So in that case, especially in mining industry, cost reimbursable contracts are more useful. Similarly, if there is any pandemic or any natural disaster occur, there is a storm or there is like a flood and the whole villages are gone, or there is an earthquake, the whole cities are gone. In that case, normally governments, they really cannot assess that how much would be the cost on that. Then they ask giant corporates or national level companies to go and rehabilitate the whole town or the village, where they have to build like many different houses, and they really don't know how much would be the cost for that. In that case, cost reimbursable contracts could be used too. Incentives, we already talked about them. The purpose of any incentive is to align the seller's objectives with the buyer's objectives or the project objectives. By doing that, we motivate, or we keep on motivating the seller and his or her efforts, and we try to reduce inefficiency and waste from the seller. However, it totally depends on us. Are we going for incentives or the bonus? Also, when we are planning for procurement or developing strategy for the procurement, we also think about once contract will be made, how the payments will be done. In fact, there are specific sections in any contract where there are milestones, the schedule for the payments, and those schedules are based on some milestones. Okay, this work need to be done, and after that, you will be able to claim for your next installment, so on, so forth. Now for project manager who is doing the scheduling for his or her project, it's pretty important to consider all those factors. What work contractor will do, when he or she will complete, how much time it will take to review the performance or the quality assurance or the audit for the procurement needs to be done. Everything should go into the schedule, and then the payment should be released. Few more terms for you to understand: price, profit, cost. Who can explain me that what are these terminologies? Very simple: price, profit, and cost.
Yep. Price is the amount that you're going to buy something for. Cost is the cost that it would be for the seller to buy themselves or make.
Yeah.
And the profit fee is the margin between the two. I don't know.
Yes, fully agreed, Tanya. So this is cost. This is a cost on the seller. Okay. On the other side, obviously seller is not giving you anything on the cost. He or she needs to put some profit on it. Okay, and will give you a price. And this is a price that needs to be paid by buyer. And the difference between two is profit. Okay. Then there comes target price. Normally when contracts are made, buyer suggests a cost and or a price. Seller normally gets agree. But in case where there is no fixed price, in that case, seller normally set a target price. And what that target price is that, okay, I really want to complete this work in, you can say 100K, okay? And in which, for example, the cost on the buyer is 80K. And 20K is profit for the seller, okay? Make sense?
Yeah.
There are chances that cost increase from the target cost. The work that needs to be done in 100K, by any reason, it could be because of buyer, seller, or any external issues, this cost may increase, okay? If cost increases from the target price, normally buyers and sellers, they agree on a sharing ratio. What is sharing ratio? For example, anything beyond 100K, whatever there will be cost, 80% will be on the buyer and 20% will be on the seller. So that seller should take care of that and should not increase the cost from 100K onwards. For example, if cost go to 110K, okay, then this extra 10K will be divided with, for example, 80-20 ratio. 8K will be paid by buyer and 2K will be paid by seller. What do you think? How much buyer need to pay if cost is 110K?
You mean in total? Or
Yeah.
in, I don't know, what is that, 81, 82, 81 and a half, 81 and a quarter?
Yeah, so it would be
Oh, sorry.
something like this.
106.4. Yeah.
108K. 100K, they are agreed. The issue is with the 10K, isn't it? Where the ratio is 80-20. On buyer 80, on seller 20. Please remember, the first one is always on buyer and second one is on the seller. Okay. This ratio is determined by mutual agreement. This ratio could be even 60-40. This could be even 50-50, could be anything, isn't it? So this agreement is normally made in advance. Here we are assuming 80-20 ratio, 80% will be on the buyer, 20% will be on the seller. For 10K, 80% is on the buyer, that is 8K. And this was 100K, that is target price. So 100 plus 8K will be on the buyer and 2K will be on the seller. So in other words, the profit that was actually 20K will reduce to 18K, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
Does it make sense or confusing? It's confusing.
If they're making 20K at that point, won't they still get some benefit?
Yeah, they will get
Okay.
some benefit.
Okay.
However, they can also negotiate. Okay, 100K is my target price, but remember 110K is my ceiling price. Okay, I am not going to pay a penny on top of 110K. Mean after that, all the cost will be on whom? On the
Seller.
on the seller. And just think about that instead of 100K or 110K, the cost increased to 120K. Okay, this 110K is the ceiling price by the buyer, and this point is called point of total assumption. Point of total assumption, PTA. And it says after that, this 80-20 ratio will be converted into 0-100 ratio, mean all the cost will be on whom? On the buyer. In this case, what do you think? How much will be profit for the buyer? Oh, sorry, how much profit would be for the seller?
Sorry, Faiz, I'm quite lost. Can you rephrase that again?
Yeah, again, for sure. This is cost bearing by the buyer, by the seller, okay? And this is price that seller quotes to the buyer, okay? And the difference between two is the profit. For example, if I am a seller, I offered you a price that, okay, I will complete this work in 100K. I know that the cost of this work is 80K. It means 20K will be profit for me. So cost is the cost that is on the seller, okay? Cost plus the profit, that is normally quoted by the seller to the buyer. And this is the price for the buyer. Normally what buyer says, they normally set a target price. In this example, I said that, buyer said that, okay, 100K is my target price, please complete this work in 100K. Seller thought, okay, this work will take 80K and I can earn a profit of 20K. So 80K plus 20K, 100K is fine. I'm going for that. That's done. In normal situation, this happens, then seller normally gets 20K of profit. However, sometimes it happens that the cost of the work increases. If cost of the work increases from the target price, for example, that is 100K, okay, target price that is the 100K, buyer is not happy. Buyer says that if price will increase from 100K, then you and me both will bear it. And this bearing is called sharing ratio. We will bear the loss. It could be profit. Okay, let's assume the loss. And normally, this sharing ratio is written like this: buyer slash seller. 80%, for example, is on the buyer and 20% is on the seller. What does it mean? Anything that will go beyond 100K, 80% cost will be bear by the buyer and 20% will be bear by the seller. So cost increased up to 110K, mean 10K extra cost was there to complete the work. For example, to complete the deck of a house. Now this 10K, this loss will be distributed on the buyer 80%, that is 8K, and on the seller 20%, that will be 2K. Okay.
Yeah.
And now this is also buyer at the time of making agreement or contract says that, see, till 110K I will bear this sharing ratio, but this is my ceiling price. This is my point of total assumption. I'm not going to bear any cost on top of that. And seller, if agrees, on top of this cost, all the cost will be bear by the seller, because cost is increasing, and its seller responsibility should not increase from the selling price. And we are assuming that, okay, this cost increased to 120K, I mean 10K on top of selling price. That was 110K. My question here was, how much will be the profit of seller in this particular example? Any guess? There are formulas, and I will share those formulas with you. But here, because it is a very simple calculation, you can think of how much would be the cost on the, how much profit seller will get.
8,000, sorry.
Yeah.
20 minus 12.
Yeah, 20 minus
12 is that 8,000? Is
Mhm.
the remaining profit?
Anybody else?
I agree with that.
Tanya, I agree with 8K. Anybody else? Any guess? Myra, Pedro, Eamon, or Sukanya?
Sorry, Faisal, are we saying that the total cost, total price went up to 120?
Yes.
Right. And we have a ceiling price of 110. Sorry, just give me a minute. I think the remaining profit will be 2,000.
Will be 2,000. Okay. By 2,000?
So I'm thinking out of the 120, we've got the 10K will be shouldered by the seller.
Yes.
And then out of the over price of 10K, 2K will be shouldered by the seller again.
Yes.
And so the answer is 8.
Yeah. So answer is
20
8.
minus 12 equals
Yeah,
8.
Grace was
Yep.
correct, and answer
Correct.
is
Sorry,
8.
yep.
Yeah. It's pretty simple calculation, but in complicated scenarios, there are formulas available. Procurement statement of work. This is produced by the project manager and the project team. It is part of the contract. This is the work that needs to be done by the contractor or supplier. And this statement of work could talk about performance of the product or the solution that is being prepared or created by the supplier, or maybe functions and features that are required, or the design that is required, or TORs, terms of references, the work that needs to be performed by the seller, the standards that need to be followed, the documents that needs to be generated, so on, so forth. Source selection criteria. We already talked about it. Source selection criteria could be on multiple factors. This source selection criteria, at the time of planning, when it is generated, it is part of bidding documents. This source selection criteria is normally given to the sellers so that they can assess themselves. If you go to GET's website, that is trending website, the source selection criteria for each procurement is given there. For each bidding is given there. This source selection criteria helps both buyer and assessor to assess the capability of the assessor. Also, when buyer is asking for or inviting for the bids, called invitation for the bid, or requesting for the proposals or the quote, at that time, as a part of those bidding documents, the buyer also conducts some independent cost estimates. For example, they may say, if it is an engineering work, they may ask their team members or engineers available within the organization to do an independent estimate so that they can clearly see that what the sellers are quoting. If they are quoting a very high price, then why? If they're quoting a very under price, what's the reason? Maybe seller is not experienced. He even doesn't know that how much should be charged for that. So independent cost estimate help to validate the bids. Bidding documents could be request for proposal, invitation for bid, request for quotation, or request for information. What do you think, guys? What's the difference between RFP, RFI, and RFQ?
So RFP normally is a proposal used by sales team in bidding, and that comes along with a proposed costs and
Yes,
transition plans and all.
many things in it, including the cost.
Especially cost and pricing.
Cost, pricing, and other details, how work will be done. When a buyer asks for request for proposal, in answer, we tell that how we are going to do your work. We propose it, the work, and we propose it, the associated cost. On the other side, request for information. If someone asks for request for information, what should we submit as a seller?
So these are normally information that are relevant to the project.
Oh. Information about the products or services we offer that could be useful for the buyer, isn't it? And request for quotation.
Again, this is like a request for a quote of goods or services or products that are essential for the project.
True. So request for, in response to request for quotation, we quote the price straight away. In request for information, we don't quote the price, but we provide the information, services, proposal, how we are fulfilling the source selection criteria, so on and so forth. And when you combine these two, then it becomes a document that is submitted as a result of request for proposal. So proposal contain both request for information and the request for the quotation. And invitation for bid is there as you get on GET's website, and in return, you can go for the bidding. Bid documents, these are the documents created by the buyer for the sellers so that they can understand what is required. And a bidding document may include background information about the project, procedure to win the project, guidelines to prepare the response, what is required in the response, request for the bidding. Even exact format could be provided for that sake. Source selection criteria to assess the capability of an organization, pricing forms, statement of work, and proposed term and conditions could be part of bidding documents prepared by the buyer project manager and used by the sellers to evaluate themselves so that they shouldn't bid on anything that is not going to be win by the team. Few other terms. NDA, Non-Disclosure Agreement. Everybody can understand when an IP work is being done by IP of buyer is used by the seller. For example, a product is designed by the buyer in Germany and is manufactured in China, then normally an NDA is signed between the manufacturer and the designer. Contracts, we already talked about it. Contracts could be of two types. Within one contract, there could be multiple sections. For example, the standard conditions, normally we call them standard contracts. Special provisions, we can say special conditions. There could be many different clauses relevant to the work, statement of work, payment schedule, and payment milestones. And obviously terms and conditions too that I already talked about and call them the clauses. LOI, this is again used in procurement. Anybody used LOI before?
Not for us.
This is a very simple concept. Normally, before making the contracts, to give confidence to the seller so that they can start preparing. When everything is done, if contract requires some formalities from the senior management or through a bureaucratic channel or through government, multiple government departments for the sake of formal approvals, then buyer may give a letter of intent, LOI, that shows that, okay, we are agreed that you will be our seller, you will provide us the the products, you can start working on it and contract will be given to you. This is called letter of intention or LOI.
Is it legally binding?
Yeah, no, it is not legally binding. So this is just to give confidence to the supplier. Normally they don't start the work, but they start making their minds. Privity is another name for the contractual relationship between seller and buyer. All these cases that we discussed are for when there are multiple sellers. However, there are some other forms of procurement called non-competitive forms. For example, a single source. IP is with that company. You cannot buy from anybody else in the world. No, this is not single source, that is sole source. Sole source is someone who got the IP of one thing, okay? That are the sole source. You cannot buy from anybody else. On the other side, single source. For example, Fletcher, they are a single source of providing timber here, maybe. I'm not sure about it. You can correct me if I am wrong. Single source is, don't think that they are sole source. There could be other sources, but you prefer only that source. You will buy from that source and that's all. This is called non-competitive form of procurement. Any issue in single or sole source?
So sorry, is the single source is that you purchase all your stuff from a single source?
Yeah. There could be other sources. Yes.
Yeah, no, that's right. I understand sole source, just single source was whether they just sold one set of items or whether
Yeah. So, for example, when we go and talk with the organizations for offering the training services to their employees, they might already have a single source, and they may say that, oh no, we only, our training is by only those guys, that particular company. So they consider only that company for the training purposes. So that is their single source. There could be other sources, but they don't consider any other source and go for that particular single source. Source sources.
Sorry, yeah, no, that's good.
Source sources may be a particular thing that has like IP with that company, or they are like, they have patent for it. For example, if you want to do PMP, you need to do it with PMI. You cannot give Prince 2 exam to get PMP. So the PMP registration is only with PMI. They have patent for, not the patent, but registered trademark with that. Once planning is done, the next step is conducting procurement. In conducting procurement, what you do is you complete the bidding document. Now you disseminate that bidding document, maybe through GETS, through any other portal, or maybe to your pre-approved or preferred sellers, so that they can come and you ask them invitation for bid. Okay, and they submit their response to invitation for bid. You may also conduct a bidding conference where all the contractors, all the suppliers may come, and you can explain what is the project. You can explain all other requirements by you, statement of work, source selection criteria, so on and so forth. They may ask many different questions, and you normally answer them. This is normally done in the bidding conference. You can advertise the bidding conference, and people can join that bidding conference. When you are doing the bidding conference, normally they are done by legal department or procurement department. As a project manager, it's your responsibility that all the parties, all the attendees should have a very clear understanding about statement of work. There should not be anything hidden. Also, there shouldn't be any wrong feelings in the bidding conference. For example, collusion, or sellers are not asking questions in front of other people, and there shouldn't be any question answers done by only one particular seller, but all others are not aware. That could be done later through email. If someone asks a question after the bidder conference to you, and you answer that question to that seller, that potential seller, you should also answer the same thing to the other sellers as well for a fair process. Once bidder conference is done, normally sellers, they give their proposals. Depend on your needs, they can give you the thorough proposal, can provide you only information, can provide you the quote directly if required. You must understand that this whole process may take a lot of time, especially in mature organizations or mature industries or bureaucratic structures where everything takes like a lot of time, maybe 6 months. So you also always keep those timings in mind while developing your schedule. Once proposals or the quotations are submitted to you, you need to evaluate those proposals. Again, it could be based on any criteria. It could be based on only on the price quoted by the sellers. Different techniques could be used for that purpose. For example, weighting system or cost performance history or independent cost estimates as a benchmarks or presentations given by the sellers, and you are happy with that, or your negotiation with the sellers. Negotiations, pretty important. Normally negotiations are done by procurement department or procurement manager, but you could be part of those negotiations. Overall, the purpose of negotiation is, what could be the purpose of negotiation, guys?
Reduce prices.
Yeah, to reduce the prices. Anyone else?
Come up with terms or agreements
Mhm.
in terms of contracting and deliveries.
Sure. Multiple advantages of negotiations. Obviously, one of the advantages to get a fair price. But always remember, when we talk about fair price, this price should be fair for both. Mean negotiation should result in win-win situation instead of win-lose situation. You convince a seller, sell a product that's actual cost is $2,000 and sell you at $1,000, then what would happen? The quality will suffer. Okay. So pricing negotiation should be fair, should be in a win-win way. Also, it helps you to make good working relationship between you and the seller. During negotiation, many texts could be used by buyers and sellers. For example, good cop, bad cop, but as a project manager, you should have a good understanding of those tactics and should overcome all those negative tactics. When you are doing the negotiation, you negotiate around scope, that is statement of work, time, the pricing, the risks, responsibilities for different components of that procurement work, authority, applicable laws, maybe project management processes to be used. For example, seller is using PMI standard, whereas buyer is using Prince2 standard. So maybe you might need to reach to an agreement. Maybe need to reach to an agreement of using similar type of tools or software, and also payment schedules could be negotiated. Quality assurance and control work could be negotiated. A contract, we already defined it. The main purpose of any contract is to reduce or mitigate the risks. Do a legal binding with the seller, because you are assuming yourself a bidder project manager and can clearly define roles and responsibilities on a project. Any contract, for a legal contract, these 5 components should be there: an offer, acceptance, consideration, legal capacity, and legal purpose. If any of them is missing, a contract could not be made. Then there comes control procurement. When seller is selected, the whole bidding is done. Now goods are being dispatched, or contractor is on site working for you. Now, as a project manager, you need to work with the contractor or a seller in a legal relationship. Both parties need to perform as per the contract and fulfill the contract requirements. Controlling procurements requires following input. Can anybody read for me? Eman?
Ensure procurements are completed in accordance with the contract.
So work or the goods should be delivered as per the contract.
Review lessons learned.
It gives you past performance of the sellers or the contractors, so that you should take care of few particular bits.
Integrate change control.
Yeah, if there is any change in the scope of the work, then it should be done through proper change control procedure, and change should be implemented in an integrated fashion.
Review schedule, scope, cost baseline.
You always keep on looking on schedule, scope, and cost baseline, so you can measure the performance of the contractor. Is it aligned with the baselines or deviated from that? Because the payments made to the contractors are normally based on their performance.
Review quality reports.
As a project manager, it's your responsibility. The work done or the goods that are being provided to you should be of good quality. Quality department can help you out, but it's your responsibility at the end.
Review performance data.
Yeah, so review performance data is when you do direct and manage project work, you direct and manage that project work to the contractors too. As a part of monitoring and controlling, you keep on tracking and measuring the performance data to see that how work is being done.
Measure and assess project process.
Sorry.
Continually measure and assess project process.
Okay, continually measure and assess project progress. This is your role as a part of monitoring and controlling. That's why control procurement is part of the monitoring and controlling process group. Different tools and techniques could be used in control procurement: performance reviews, inspections, audit, earned value analysis, trend analysis, conflict management, conflict resolution, before it has reached to next level, a level of maybe a battle or a legal battle or maybe a war or maybe across it. Claims administration, a lot of work needs to be done in the claims administration, and there could be issues, there could be conflicts around claims. So you need to take care of that. Contract interpretation. In fact, in big projects, a lot of time is wasted on the contract interpretations, because seller says one thing, buyer says another thing, then there comes the experts as a third party, they give their opinion about the contracts, so on and so forth. Closed procurement. This process is not part of current version of PMBOK, so you need not to worry about that. But this type, all the procurement closing work is done into either in control procurement or in the close project or phase. The purpose is tying up the loose ends, verifying all the work and deliverables are accepted, finalizing the open claims, and paying any withheld retainage, so on and so forth. Procurements are normally closed when a contract is completed or terminated before the work is completed. Many different activities could be done while doing the procurement closure, including product validation, mean acceptance, procurement negotiations, financial closures, audit, update to the records, reporting, lesson learned, completing the procurement file, so on, so forth. That was end of procurement. Any question, guys? Okay, let's move further and just do a quick review of the key concepts. Pedro, can you please help me to read it?
The key concepts: procurement and legal requirements, knowledge for project managers.
So we understand This knowledge is required for project managers, isn't it?
Yes.
And why it's compulsory? Because it's project manager's project. Goods will be used on the project, contractors will be used for the project, so on and so forth. Responsibility is with the project manager. Next.
Simple to complex agreements or contracts in compliance with local, national, and international laws.
So complex agreements could be very simple, could be few pages agreements, could be very, very long, complex, with many different sections, with special provisions, including many different laws, including local, national, or international laws. Normally procurement department is expert in doing all those contracts, but at least you should be able to read and understand those contracts. Next.
Scope and deliverables description in contracts, including knowledge and technology transfer.
Yeah, so the statement of work may not only include scope and deliverable. For big projects, for example, if someone hired a major mining company to start mining in their country, they might also ask for like open a mining school there, or transfer the technology there, or do the refining plant there. So this could be part of statement of work too. The next.
Agreement types, contract, an SLA, an understanding, a MOA, or a purchase order.
So agreement could be of different types. Contracts, legal binding, service level agreement, that is about the performance of the product or service, could be an MOU or MOA, or just a simple purchase order.
Multiple contracts in one project.
Is it possible or not?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, possible.
Yes, there could be more than one procurement in any project. So there could be more than one contract, and they could be of different types too. Few naming conventions. Contractors, we know, vendor, service provider, or supplier. In any case, all these terminologies are same. Sometimes in one industry they call them contractors, in another industry they call vendors or service providers or suppliers. Trends and emerging practices. Eman.
Modern procurement management includes advance in tools, more advanced risk management, changing contracting processes, logistic and supply chain management, technology and stakeholder relations, trial engagements.
So these are some new trends and practices that are used in the procurement. For example, more and more sophisticated tools are coming, including software tools or some other tools for the sake of completing the procurement, such as biddings. We have already seen technology. It is previously tenders or bids are normally given in newspaper. Nowadays, we have a portal available in the form of GETS, where everybody can go and see any type of tender or bidding options available. Contracts are made in such a way that can help the people in doing the risk management. So contracts are written in such a way with clear roles and responsibilities of doing work. Contracting processes are changing as overall project management practices are changing. Similarly, contracting is changing too. There are many different types of agile contracts where payments could be based on completing the features, or they, instead of making the whole big contract and scope of work, there could be initial agreement and based on that agreement, as user stories are completed, payments will be made. Anytime the buyer can stop the contract or seller can stop the contract. Logistics and supply chain management, important, include a lot of many different components into it. You should have good understanding of that. You should consider the lead time or shipping ways, current market conditions or geopolitical conditions in logistics and supply chain management. Stakeholder relationships, more and more research, more and more trends and practices are coming, are emerging, where normally buyer has much better relationship with the suppliers. Suppliers just become an extended team members because suppliers can provide you that technical knowledge or expertise that is not available otherwise. Trial engagement. So this is a new thing that is coming along. Instead of giving the whole project, you may engage someone for trial basis. And later, it could be extended for longer period. You have already seen in the case of staffing, the whole staffing model is changed to contracting. Now people really don't do any permanent hiring, but on contracts. Few tailoring considerations. Grace, can you please help me to read?
Sure, Vice. Considerations for tailoring include complexity of procurement, physical location, governance and regulatory environment, availability of contractors.
So all these factors you may consider while tailoring all those three processes, procurement management planning, conducting procurement, and controlling it. All different components of complex components of procurement can determine how thorough you need to do your procurement, physical location of the buyer and the seller, and government requirements, geopolitical situation, all those things determine and tailor your processes and availability of contractors. If you have only one contractor available, you must have to go for that. And then there comes our last slide for today, consideration for agile or adaptive environment. Agile or adaptive environments. Tanya, can you please help me to read?
Seller as extended team.
Yeah, because in Agile, we believe that there should be dedicated teams and everybody is a part of team. And normally we consider seller as a part of our team. We don't consider it as an external stakeholder. In Waterfall, we consider them an external stakeholder, but here we consider them as a part of our team, where our focus is not on the contract negotiation. Our focus is on fulfilling the client requirements, fulfilling what are their needs, why they are paying to us. So sellers become like extended team members whose focus, whose objectives are aligned with the objectives of the client.
Shared risk procurement.
So many different bits, many different type of agile contracts. You can go and check them. There are contracts that are being developed in agile way where risks are very much shared. We have already seen the example, sharing ratio. Okay, similar type of ratio could be done in agile ways as well. But the contracts could be based on the user stories or iteration basis, so on and so forth.
And then
Agile contracts.
Yeah, did you cover that?
Yeah, so that's what we are talking about. Okay, agile contracts, for example, one example was, let me think, it could be money for nothing and then there is another term that is used in agile contract, where basically if an initial agreement is made to complete 100 features, okay, once 80 features are done, okay, then you can, client said that these features are enough for my app. I really don't want any other feature, or features are enough for my website. No need to complete rest of the 20 features. However, I made contract for example, 200K for this app, and for 80K, if we just do simple calculation, it is 160K. 160K amount of work is done. Okay, it's more than enough for me. I can pay you 10 more thousand and let's finish the contract. This is called money for nothing. Seller get 10K and buyer save 30K. Did it make some sense?
Yep.
Yeah, so this type of many different agile contracts are available. Recently, the procurement by Auckland Council, they did it based on agile way, where they call all the suppliers for 3 days. They run the sprints on day 1, first sprint, day 2, second sprint. They did everything, daily planning, work, where teams of the suppliers sit together, they did the work, they did the bidding, and they did their retrospectives. At the end, contracts were assigned, and everything that work that normally used to finish in 3 months' time was finished in just 3 days. So agile is being used on the procurement. And then another type is master service agreement with the supplements. This could be used for some hybrid approaches and agile approaches, where you have one main contract and then with some supplements for particular amount of, particular type of deliverable or work. So these are called MSAs with the supplements. These are few considerations you can think about for agile, and enough for your understanding for PMP exam. And that was end of the procurement. Any questions?
Faiz, I had one from way back just around the strategies.
Yeah.
Right. So do you do a coverall type strategy for like all the little bits and pieces that really don't warrant a proper contract? Or how do you treat those sorts of items?
Yeah, so basically, when we say procurement strategy, it is more about thinking how we are going to develop the contracts, how we are going to set the schedules and performance milestones, so on and so forth. Normally, there are standard contracts. We normally put our statement of work as a project manager into it, our schedule of payments into it, and performance criteria into it, and that's all.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Normally, contracts are specific to the industry, and we normally follow that particular type of contracts. Did I answer your question, or?
Yeah, I think I'm sort of talking more of the little items rather than those ones that you'd want contract for.
Oh, for them, like it could be just a purchase order.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, very simple.
Yeah, but does that define anywhere that, you know, items for this use or under this amount, you know?
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
just saying in the strategy, does it state anything to do with a
True.
threshold on purchases or something?
Yeah, I fully agree. That is part of your procurement management plan. How much you can just go and get it straight away, and for how much money you have to go for a proper contract and approvals from the senior management.
Yep.
Cool. Okay, thank you everyone. So here I'm stopping the recording.